There comes a moment in every life, a crossroads where the dream you once held slips through your fingers like sand, a moment when the music stops, the fire dies down, and all that remains are ashes. But I speak to you now as one standing in the spirit of the prophets, in the mantle of Elijah, in the voice of the wilderness crying out, broken dreams are not the end, they are the beginning of redemption. Dreams break, that's true, hopes shatter, yes, but what if the breaking was never meant to destroy you, but to bring forth something greater than you imagined? When your dream was shattered, you thought it was over. You stood at the edge of what felt like a grave, staring into the silence, thinking you were burying something once beautiful. You mourned it, you grieved it, you mocked it as a loss. But what if what you thought was a burial was not a grave, but a womb? In the economy of God, the breaking is never final. He is the God who brings life out of death, hope out of despair, resurrection out of ruin. In his hands, the breaking is not destruction, it is preparation. Like a seed must be broken before it can burst forth into life, so must your dream fall to the ground so it can rise in glory. The world tells you that when something breaks, it's useless. But heaven says when something breaks in the hands of the Creator, it becomes sacred. The alabaster jar had to break before the fragrance could fill the room. The bread had to be broken before it could feed the multitudes, and the body of Messiah had to be broken before redemption could come to the world. So what you called a loss, God calls a beginning. What you thought was the end, He has called the beginning of something you could not yet imagine. You didn't lose your dream, you planted it, and now in God's timing, the soil of your suffering is about to bring forth a harvest. You may not see it yet, the ground looks barren, the silence is heavy, but underneath the surface life is stirring. The dream you thought was dead is not buried, it is germinating, something greater is coming. Something more refined, more glorious, more aligned with heaven's purposes. Let the world bury its dreams, but you, child of the Most High, know this, the breaking is not the burial. It's the birthplace of something eternal. You stood before the door, full of faith, full of expectation, and you knocked, but heaven was silent, you waited, you prayed, and the door never opened. Instead, it slammed shut, and the sound of its closing echoed through your soul like thunder. You felt abandoned, forsaken, forgotten. You called it rejection. But what if it wasn't rejection at all? What if it was divine redirection? You see, we often interpret closed doors as signs of failure. But God sees what we cannot see. He knows what lies beyond that door. He sees the traps, the delays, the detours that would have ensnared your soul and cost you more than you were prepared to pay. What you thought was a denial was, in truth, a deliverance. What felt like a curse was actually a covering. Remember Paul, who longed to preach in Asia. The door seemed right, strategic, promising, but the Spirit of God blocked him, not once, but twice. Why? Because a man in Macedonia was crying out in the night. Because a prison cell in Philippi would become a pulpit. Because souls were waiting on the other side of a redirection. You don't serve a careless God. You serve a God who orders your steps, who sees the end from the beginning. Every no is not a rejection of your purpose. It is a preservation of your destiny. Every closed door is a signpost pointing you toward the one that will open in the right time, in the right place, for the right reason. God is not trying to keep you out. He's trying to guide you in. He is the shepherd, and sometimes the rod that stops you from going forward is the same rod that protects you from falling off a cliff. He redirects because he loves. He withholds because he sees more, and what feels like a setback is often the very setup for something greater than you would have chosen for yourself. So do not curse the closed doors. Do not mourn the places where you were not received. Do not despair over the people who walked away or the opportunities that never came to pass. They were not your destination. They were only signposts along the path. Lift your eyes, look again. You are not lost. You are being led. You are not forgotten. You are being positioned. What you thought was rejection was never rejection at all. It was your Father's hand, lovingly redirecting you toward a future that is still unfolding in glory. You held the dream close, nurtured it, fought for it, built your hopes around it. It felt sacred. It felt right. You believed it was from God, and maybe it was. But then, like glass slipping from your hand, it shattered. And you were left standing in the ruins, confused, heartbroken, questioning everything. Why would God allow this? Why let it begin if it was only going to break? But here's the truth hidden beneath the pain. The dream had to break because it was too small. Not small in effort, not small in vision by the world's standards, but too small for the magnitude of what God created you for. You dreamed according to your sight. God dreams according to eternity. You built with what you knew. God is building with what only heaven can see. Abraham dreamed of a son. God dreamed of nations. Moses dreamed of freedom for a people. God dreamed of a covenant that would shape history. David dreamed of a throne. God dreamed of a lineage that would birth the Messiah. The human dream is often the seed, but it must break open to release the life inside. So God, in his mercy, not in his anger, allowed your dream to break, because if it remained as it was, it would have confined you. It would have limited what he wanted to do through you. You were settling for a well when he had rivers. You were building a house when he had a kingdom, and so, out of love, he let it fall, not to destroy you, but to expand you. The breaking wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something bigger, deeper, eternal. That small vision had to be shattered so the greater vision could emerge. Like the loaves and the fishes, it had to be broken before it could multiply. Like the veil of the temple, it had to be torn so heaven could be opened. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. You're not being pushed aside. You're being positioned for something beyond what you ever dared to imagine. Let go of the smaller dream, not in defeat, but in faith. Trust that the hands that broke it are the same hands that will rebuild it. Not smaller, but larger. Not weaker, but stronger. Not temporal, but eternal. The dream wasn't lost. It was too small. And now, God is preparing you for the one that fits the size of your calling. There is a kind of pain that goes deeper than words, a groaning in the soul, a weight in the spirit, a sorrow that clings even in the silence of prayer. You've tried to explain it. You've tried to numb it, but it doesn't go away. And you wonder, why this pain? What is its purpose? But I tell you today, your pain is not meaningless. It is not random. It is not wasted. Asterisk, your pain is a prophetic signpost. Asterisk, it is heaven's whisper that something is shifting, something is being birthed, something eternal is pressing through the veil of your present suffering. The world sees pain as weakness. Heaven sees it as a signal. Just as labor pains herald the arrival of a child, so the ache within you is declaring that something is coming forth in the spirit. You are not just feeling pain, you are discerning a season. You are picking up on the tremors of what is yet unseen. The tears you've cried are watering the very ground from which your destiny will spring forth. The prophets of old didn't walk untouched by sorrow. Jeremiah wept over a nation. Ezekiel sat in the bitterness of captivity. Elijah collapsed under the weight of weariness. Even the Messiah was a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. And yet from that grief came the greatest redemption the world has ever known. So don't despise the pain. It's revealing something holy. It's pulling you closer to the heart of God. It's carving out a deeper capacity in you to carry his glory. It's softening your spirit to hear what others cannot hear. Pain will either make you bitter or it will make you prophetic, and you must choose. The ache you feel is not simply about what you've lost. It's about what you're about to gain. The anguish is a forerunner of anointing. The sorrow is the soil in which spiritual authority grows. When Hannah cried out in bitterness of soul, it wasn't just personal grief. It was prophetic groaning, because from her cry came Samuel, a prophet who would anoint kings and shift a nation. What if your pain is not the end of your story, but the birthplace of your mantle? What if it's the very thing that aligns you with heaven's calling? So mark this moment. Don't rush past it. Don't hide from it. Lean in. Listen. There is a message in the pain, and if you dare to hear it, it will lead you to your purpose. You are not breaking down. You are being broken open. Your pain is a prophetic signpost pointing toward resurrection, toward fulfillment, toward the unveiling of the dream that is still alive, still growing, still destined to come to pass. There's a grief deeper than losing a dream. It's the grief of losing time. You look back and see wasted years. Years you spent wandering, weeping, or waiting. Seasons where you gave your all and got nothing in return. Opportunities missed, relationships broken, paths you never should have taken. And you wonder, can anything redeem what I've lost? Not just the dream, but the years I lost chasing it, mourning it, surviving it. But hear the word of the Lord. Asterisk, God redeems not only the dream, he redeems the years. Asterisk, in Joel 2:25, God speaks to a people devastated by plague, famine, and destruction. Their land is stripped bare, their harvest devoured, their joy dried up, and into that hopelessness God declares, I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten, and not just the crops, asterisk the years. Asterisk, only God can do that. Only he can go back into time, not to rewrite it, but to redeem it, to take what seemed wasted and make it fruitful, to turn delay into preparation, detour into destiny, failure into foundation. You see, God doesn't operate on the same timeline as man. He is the Alpha and the Omega. He sees the end from the beginning. What seems like a setback in your calendar is just a comma in his eternal sentence. The years you thought were lost were never lost to him. He was storing them, folding them into the tapestry of your life, waiting for the moment when he would bring it all together for good. Think of Moses, 40 years in the desert after fleeing Egypt, a prince turned fugitive. A man who thought his time was over, but God had not wasted a single day. In that desert, Moses was being prepared to lead a nation. The very wilderness he thought disqualified him was the training ground for his assignment. Think of Naomi, who left Bethlehem full and returned bitter and empty. She believed her best years were behind her, but through Ruth, a Moabite daughter-in-law, God wove a redemptive thread that would reach all the way to David and ultimately to Messiah. God doesn't just restore what you had, he restores it with increase. He doesn't give you back the same dream you lost. He refines it, enlarges it, resurrects it with new power. He doesn't return the years as they were. He returns them filled with glory. Where you wept, he plants joy. Where you failed, he pours grace. Where you waited, he multiplies. And where you were empty, he causes the oil to overflow. So don't believe the lie that it's too late. Don't settle into regret or live in the shadow of what could have been. God has not forgotten your years. He is the redeemer of time, the restorer of seasons, the master of new beginnings. He will redeem the lost moments, the silent prayers, the buried hopes. He will gather the broken pieces of your timeline and form them into a testimony of his mercy. The dream may have died, but the years have not been in vain. In his hands, even time is a servant of redemption. You were given a dream, a vision, a calling, a burden in your spirit that set you apart. You felt it burn like fire in your bones. You tried to carry it with boldness, to protect it, to press forward. But somewhere along the way, the weight grew heavy. Loneliness crept in. You felt misunderstood, isolated, even abandoned. And in the silence of your struggle, you whispered the question no one else heard, God, why do I feel so alone? But the truth is, you were never meant to do it alone. From the very beginning, the word of God declared, it is not good for man to be alone, not just in marriage, but in mission. Not just in companionship, but in calling. God didn't create you for isolation. He created you for covenant, for community, for connection. The dream you carry is not a solo assignment. It is part of a larger tapestry that God is weaving through his people across time and nations. Even the greatest heroes of Scripture didn't walk alone. Moses had Aaron and Hur to lift his arms in battle. David had Jonathan to strengthen his soul. Elijah, who thought he was the last of the faithful, was told there were 7 more. And even Jesus, though fully divine, chose 12 to walk beside him. Frail, flawed, imperfect people, yet deeply necessary to the mission. Why? Because the dream isn't just about you. It's about us. God's work on earth is never accomplished through lone rangers. It's birthed and fulfilled through the body, many members, one spirit, one purpose. And sometimes the reason the dream feels so heavy is not because it's wrong, but because you were never meant to carry it alone. You need the intercessor who prays behind the scenes. You need the encourager who lifts your head when you're weary. You need the mentor who sees beyond your failure. You need the friend who speaks truth in love when your vision grows dim. You need the remnant, those hidden ones who, like you, are carrying pieces of the same puzzle. The enemy's strategy is always isolation. If he can cut you off, he can wear you down. He'll whisper that no one understands, that no one cares, that it's easier to keep your dream hidden. But God is calling you out of the cave, out of hiding, out of solitary striving. He is calling you into fellowship, not shallow relationships, but divine alignments. There are people ordained to walk with you. People who carry keys to unlock doors you cannot open alone. People whose strength will uphold your calling when yours runs low. People who see what God has placed inside you and call it forth. And likewise, you are that person for someone else. So don't bear the dream in silence. Don't isolate the vision. Don't wear the weight alone. Lift your eyes. Ask God to reveal your tribe, your team, your spiritual family. Because what he has called you to do is too big, too holy, too eternal to be fulfilled in isolation. You were never meant to do it alone. You were meant to walk together, fight together, dream together, until the vision speaks and does not lie. There's a pain that comes when your dream breaks, when the thing you prayed for, believed for, worked for, and built your life around crumbles before your eyes. It feels like failure. It feels like identity lost. Like the wind was knocked out of your soul. You look at the broken pieces and ask, what am I now without the dream? But I speak this truth over you today. Asterisk, your dream may have been broken, but asterisk, you were not. Asterisk, asterisk, yes, the dream collapsed. Yes, the plan changed, the relationship ended, the ministry faltered, the door slammed shut, but the very fact that you are still here, still breathing, still seeking, still pressing into God, that is not weakness. That is strength. That is evidence that though the vision cracked, your spirit remained unshaken at the core. You may have bent, but you did not break. You may have wept, but you did not drown. You may have fallen, but you did not stay down. Why? Because the dream was never your source. God was. The dream was the vehicle, not the destination. It was the shadow, not the substance. And while the vehicle may have broken down, the journey is not over. The one who formed you in the secret place is still writing your story, page by page, chapter by chapter, with or without that dream. You are not defined by what you lost. You are defined by who still holds you. Joseph's dream was broken by betrayal, slavery, and prison, but Joseph was not broken. He was forged, refined, shaped into the very man who would fulfill the dream at a higher level than he ever imagined. The pit didn't kill him, it prepared him. The prison didn't destroy him, it positioned him. So it is with you. The dream was shattered, but the dreamer survived, and that means there is still purpose in your breath, still power in your steps, still destiny in your DNA. You are not disqualified by the breaking. You were deepened. You now carry something you didn't have before: compassion, resilience, wisdom, and fire, tested faith. Let the dream break if it must, for what is of God will rise again, resurrected in glory. But know this, your identity is not tied to outcomes. It is rooted in the one who holds the times and seasons in his hand. You may have lost what was in your hand, but not what's in your spirit, and what God has placed in you is unbreakable. So rise again, not because the dream survived, but because asterisk you did. Asterisk, and if you are still standing, then God's not finished yet. There is a sacred mystery woven through every true calling, every God-given dream. A mystery that offends the flesh but awakens the spirit. Asterisk, the dream must die before it can be resurrected. Asterisk, you were given a vision. You saw it so clearly, it lit a fire in your bones. You stepped out in faith, believed God, declared his promises, but then things went quiet, doors closed, people walked away, momentum vanished, the dream that once burned like a flame began to flicker. And then seemed to die, and you wondered, did I miss it? Was it never real? But what you didn't realize was that you had stepped into a divine pattern, asterisk, the pattern of death before glory, the pattern of the cross before the crown. Asterisk, this is the way of the kingdom. Not everything that dies is over. In God's economy, death is not a period. It's a comma. It's not the end of the sentence. It's the pause before the next move of God. The dream's death isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of future resurrection. Consider Abraham, the father of faith. He waited decades for the fulfillment of God's promise, a son, and then came Isaac. The dream was alive, breathing, walking beside him. But then God said, "Take your son, your only son, and offer him to me." Why? Because the dream had to go back to the altar. It had to die, not in the natural, but in Abraham's heart, so that when God raised it back up, it would no longer be Abraham's possession, but God's possession fulfilled through him. The dream must die, so that pride dies with it. The dream must die, so that control is surrendered. The dream must die, so that what is of the flesh is stripped away, and only what is of the Spirit remains. Even Messiah, the perfect dream of redemption, was not fulfilled in life alone, but in death and resurrection. He told his disciples plainly, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Death in the kingdom is never final. It is the threshold of increase. So if your dream has died, don't despair, don't call it cursed, don't assume it was never meant to be. Instead, recognize that God is allowing the seed to go into the soil. Buried, yes, but buried with purpose. Covered, yes, but covered so that roots can go deep. Forgotten by others, maybe, but not forgotten by heaven. The silence is not abandonment, it's incubation. The death is not rejection, it's preparation. And the grave is not the end, it is the stage where resurrection power is revealed. So place your dream on the altar, let it die, not with bitterness but with trust, for if it was ever truly born of God, then death cannot hold it. In his timing it will rise again, not as it was, but greater, purer, and more fruitful than you could have ever imagined. Asterisk, the dream must die, so that it can truly live. Asterisk, there is a sobering revelation that comes to every person entrusted with a God-given dream. Asterisk, the dream is not about you, it's about the kingdom. Asterisk, in the beginning it feels personal. The dream stirs your heart, fuels your prayers, awakens your passion. It feels like your calling, your vision, your assignment. And that's not wrong. It's how God draws you in. He plants the dream like a seed in your spirit, wraps it in the language of your desires, and speaks to you in ways you can understand. But as you walk with him, as you grow in the Spirit, as the fire purifies your motives, you begin to realize, this dream was never just for you. It was never about your platform, never about your recognition, never about your success or your comfort. It was always about something bigger, eternal, kingdom-centered, heaven-ordained. God doesn't give dreams to feed egos. He gives dreams to build altars. He entrusts them to servants, not to be worshipped, but to become vessels of his glory on earth. And if he is truly the author of your dream, then the end goal will not be your name in lights, but his name lifted high. Look at the great dreamers of Scripture. Joseph didn't rise to power just to fulfill his own destiny. He was placed there to preserve a people, to save lives, to keep a covenant. Esther didn't wear the crown so she could live in luxury. She was positioned to deliver a nation. Nehemiah didn't rebuild walls for personal legacy. He did it to restore the honor of God among the ruins. The dream was personal, but its purpose was prophetic. It started with them, but it ended with the people. It came through them, but it always pointed back to God. So what does that mean for you? It means the dream is not about how far you can go, it's about how many you can bring with you. It's not about how high you rise, it's about how deep his presence flows through your life. It's not about building your name, it's about advancing his kingdom. This is why God sometimes allows your dream to break before it's fulfilled. Because if it remains about you, it will be too small, too shallow, too limited to carry the weight of his glory. But when it's about him, it becomes unstoppable, unshakable, eternal, and this is where freedom comes in. When the dream is no longer about you, failure doesn't define you, delay doesn't discourage you, success doesn't corrupt you, because your identity is no longer wrapped up in what you do, but in who you serve. You become a steward, not a possessor, a vessel, not the source. You can let go of the spotlight. You can let go of control. You can even let the dream die, knowing that what is truly of the kingdom can never be buried for long. So hold the dream loosely, but hold God tightly. Offer the vision daily, but cling to the King constantly. Because in the end, the dream was never the prize he was. And when the dream becomes about the kingdom, it becomes eternal, unshakable, filled with purpose far beyond your lifetime. The dream was given to you, but it was never just for you. It was, and always will be, for the kingdom. You've walked through the fire. You've stood in the ashes of what once was. You've cried the tears no one else saw, wrestled with the silence of heaven, and watched your dreams, once full of life, fall into pieces at your feet. You've questioned the timing, you've doubted your worth, you've wondered if it's too late, if the damage is too deep, if the years are too far gone. But hear this now, not from man, but from the Spirit of the living God. This is the hour of restoration. This is the time to rise. Not tomorrow, not someday, not when you feel strong enough. Now. The time for mourning has come to its fullness. The grave clothes are coming off. The wind of the Spirit is beginning to blow over what you thought was dead. This is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of resurrection power at work in your life. God is not just a comforter of the broken. He is the restorer of the broken. He doesn't just bind wounds. He makes all things new. He doesn't just lift you out. He builds you back stronger. This is not the season to shrink back. This is not the season to bow to fear. This is the hour when heaven speaks to the dry bones and says, "Live." You thought restoration meant going back to what you had. But God is not restoring you to what was. He is restoring you to what was always meant to be. He is restoring the original design, the unshakable purpose, the divine assignment that cannot be stolen by time, trauma, or trial. Everything the enemy tried to use to disqualify you, God is turning into a weapon of testimony. Every place of weakness is becoming a doorway of strength. Every loss is becoming seed for increase. And every tear you sowed in the dark is about to bring forth a harvest of joy in the light. This is the hour where the prodigals return. This is the hour where the broken rise. This is the hour where callings are reignited and gifts begin to stir again. This is the hour where what you thought was over is only beginning. So shake off the dust. Let go of shame. Refuse to settle. Refuse to believe the lie that your best days are behind you. You were not created to remain in the ruins. You were made to rise from them. You were not called to carry what broke you. You were called to walk in what healed you. You were not saved to survive. You were saved to overcome. The same God who restores the ruined cities is restoring the broken places in you. The same Spirit who raised Jesus from the dead is quickening your spirit again. Asterisk, this is the hour, the trumpet is sounding, the time to rise has come. Asterisk, not in your strength, but in his, not by your effort, but by his spirit, not to repeat the past, but to step into the new. Asterisk, this is the hour of restoration, and you are being called to rise. Now, asterisk, so rise, child of God. Pick up the broken pieces, bring them to the potter, for the potter does not discard what is marred. He reshapes it for glory. Your dream is not over. Your calling has not been revoked. What the enemy thought was his triumph will become your testimony. For this is not just the restoration of a dream. This is the redemption of destiny. The world needs your dream restored, refined, reborn. Now is your time. Arise and dream again.